Tempest, a set that began to truly show what a spell or a card could do in Magic. Released 1 year before the Urza saga, Magic's 12th expansion brought with it new types of cards, abilities, and even mega cycles that would be filled throughout the block called the Rath Cycle. This set and block would also continue to suffer from the reserved list, where powerful and unique cards will forever remain that way, just like the legendary set itself. Released in October 1997, Tempest was the first lead design from Mark Rosewater, our head designer of the game to this day, but also the return of Richard Garfield as an active designer, the first since Antiquities. Before the release of Tempest came the release of 5th edition in March of 1997. It debuted a new rating system for the game, with levels based on the complexity of the sets. 5th edition was labeled Advanced Level, whereas Tempest was the first to ever feature the label of Expert. What was the starter level set? That came in the form of Portal Second Age and 2-player starter sets. This rating system stopped appearing on packaging in 2007 with the release of Lorwyn. Tempest cards were sold in traditional 60-card starter decks and 15-card boosters, but also in a new form, pre-constructed theme decks. Using only Tempest cards, the design team built 4 theme decks marketed as a ready-to-play introduction to the set. An accompanying booklet explained the strategy of the deck and suggested ways on improving it. Another difference was the rulebook included. Wizards safely assumed anyone buying Tempest cards had a copy of the new 5th edition rules, and as such, only included a few pages about the new features in the set and a whopping 50 pages profiling the main characters and story. Tempest was the first set to have a pre-release promo, Dirt Coil Worm. Foils didn't show up until Urza's Legacy, so it was only available in non-foil. The one thing that remained true from earlier sets was Tempest's use of the reserved list, the cards that will not be reprinted or mechanically remade in their exact form. This basically created the list of the most expensive cards in the set. The clear winner so far is Earthcraft, a card that Legacy players have been waiting for Wizards to unban in their already very powerful format for a long time now. With a whole myriad of ways to break it, Earthcraft continues to be speculated on each time the banned and restricted list nears another announcement. Intuition isn't far behind, with Alluran, Eladamri, and Humility rounding out the most expensive cards in the set. A big winner in the set was the cycle of rare medallions. Pearl, Sapphire, Jet, Ruby, and Emerald alike were not reserved, but only printed once again in Commander 2014. Ancient Tomb, thankfully an uncommon that can't be on the reserve list that only features rares, is also a $50 or more bomb Wizards can put into any set or supplemental product like Zendikar Expeditions to create excitement for the release. While Ancient Tomb is fantastic and a huge player in both casual and competitive sides of the aisle, there is no bigger influence in Legacy from the Tempest set like Wasteland. Seen as a fixed strip mine, Wasteland is another back pocket staple Wizards can use when they need to juice a set, while also helping to perfectly balance the insane mana bases of older, powerful decks. Cursed Scroll was famous not only for its prowess on tournament tables, but also for its Japanese misprint version, where the activation cost was just 2 generic mana. You'll find these in misprint cubes all over the world. Humility is a reserved list all-star and a card that drives judges to the brink of insanity. Enter the wild world of layers and timestamps, everybody, with just one little enchantment. Lotus Petal remains a wonderful nod to Black Lotus, providing only one of the 3's original mana production. You may not recognize it, but most Lotus Petals these days look a lot like treasure tokens. As was often done in the older sets, names of people and employees made their way into the set. Orym, Samite Healer, was made by reversing Mark Rosewater's nickname Morrow and replacing the A with an I. Orym was born. The Mog Squad was a reference to the Mod Squad, a 60s TV show about 3 undercover cops posing as hippies, as the art and flavor point out. Eladamri was named as a tribute to the senior editor and story manager Michael G. Ryan's mother Irma and his stepfather Dale, If you put the names together and reverse them, Eladomri it is. Time Warp is a reference to the Rocky Horror Picture Show, while Squeeze Toy is named that way because it's a squeeze toy, like when you say it, squeeze toy, like that. As for the mechanics of the set, while they weren't really a mechanic, slivers first appeared in Tempest. Wildly popular, these little creatures gave bonuses to all other slivers, and that included your opponents. This remained true through their resurgence in Legions, and Scourge, and even Time Spiral Block. But with the release of M14, only your slivers were affected, and they also looked humanoid. This was immediately met with intense criticism, and Wizards quickly reverted back to their sliver-looking ways with the release of Modern Horizons. The name mechanics in the set were Shadow, a new twist on how evasive a creature can be, along with Buyback, which recently made Gavin Verhey's worst mechanics of all time list. Due to its repetitive nature, cards with Buyback tend to create dull or unchanging game states. Both mechanics would return later in sets like Time Spiral and Modern Horizons 2, with Buyback reaching over to the silver border side with Blast from the Past. Lisses were introduced in Tempest, a sort of test ground for what later became the Bestow mechanic from Theros Block. The set includes the card Auratog, which also completes the Mega Cycle. Yes, 2, as this cycle spans no less than 5 full sets, beginning with Atog in Antiquities, followed by Foratog in Mirage, Chronotog in Visions, and Necrotog in Weatherlight. It'll be a few more years before Atog came to us via the Odyssey set to give us something to do with all of those Atogs. As for tournament prowess, Capsize and Forbid helped the Drago mono blue deck succeed, while Jackalpup revolutionized the mono red deck, who were desperately seeking their own version of Savannah Lines. It was only the third 2/1 for 1 mana to ever exist at that point, and the first ever in red. Red wouldn't see another 2/1 for 1 without severe drawbacks for years, with awful options like Scarred Puma or Norin the Wary, and the underwhelming Flamekin Blade Whirl and Tattermunge Maniac. It wasn't all the way until 2013 when Fire Drinker Satyr entered the picture, and even with its drawback managed to be a tournament mainstay. New sources of evasion meant that White Weenie once again had a shot in the metagame. Soltari Monk and Soltari Priest were favorites as almost unblockable powerhouses, along with their mono-black suicide aggro stars, Dauthi Slayer and Dauthi Horror. Legacy's Allure and Scroll Rack were other tournament favorites, along with Tradewind Rider sitting proudly on multiple winning decks of its day. Meditate would need Urza's block to really break things, just give it time. And that was Tempest, a set that really kicked in gear the Weatherlight saga, and gave the world all sorts of new creature types and creature abilities to boot. Reserve list staples would continue to rise in value, and some of the most powerful and impactful designs Magic has ever seen saw their debut. Join us next time as we dive into Stronghold, the middle set, and a key piece of action for the next chapter of the Weatherlight saga. Thanks for watching.